All of these are recorded and will be available on our YouTube channel. So if you missed a step, there's 8 steps. Today is step 7. So the prior 6 are already on the YouTube channel. The ADs already have the link if you just want to email that out or get that from the AD. But you can go on our YouTube channel to look at it as well. And I know that some of y'all have had to catch it from your phone, or maybe wasn't able to, it's going kind of quick, weren't able to pause, weren't able to ask questions. So being able to go back through it and dissect it, taking some good notes, really letting that get into, your being, into who you are, into what you do on the daily, because this is the 8-step process that we follow every week. And so with that, I'm gonna shut up. I'm gonna let Gabriel introduce himself, how long he's been with the company, why he's got that big old smile on his face today. And Gabriel, I've already given you the host ability, so you can share your screen. I know you were showing me some things earlier. God, this is going to be fire. And I challenge you to get your pad and pen, take notes, because it's going to start with holding yourself accountable first. Holding yourself accountable first to the things it takes to be successful. So, Gabriel, it's all yours.
All right, cool. Can you hear me? All right, cool. So first off, let me get this shared correctly. All right, cool. So been with the company. This is actually coming up on my 20th anniversary. So November 25th, November 27th. It's been a long time. So yeah, I've had some ups, I've had some downs. Um, one of the things the guy had asked me a little bit earlier today is like what, has kind of contributed to my success. And it's pretty simple. It's just if you're just willing to just keep coming back and don't give up, then, it can come through. So main thing that you guys should see on your screen right now is the worksite training guide. This is something that everybody needs to have basically with them from Liberty National Conception. So make sure that from classroom training, this should really be with you at all times, that you can refer back to things. Your scripts are in there, your objections are in there. And it really is a big part of your training and your ability to kind of check in on yourself and see where you're at. Whenever you get to this guide, the primary steps that you're going to be using as far as in leadership's concerned. So we're going to do this kind of twofold. So from a leadership perspective and from an agent's perspective in this, but on page 28, page 29, and page 30, I've printed those pages off for you to kind of review. So you've got like a little snapshot, but that's where they're at in the book. Whenever you're getting your day started, we're going to talk about a little bit today about like halftime calls and kind of check-ins on halftime, and then end of day calls, or like in the post, day post game report to kind of see where you're at midday and at the end of the day. And so in order to have a good halftime check-in and a good end of day call, you need to set good expectations to begin with. And so whenever you get in the car first thing in the morning, what you want to do is you want to take a look at, your 10 blocks of time and your 4-week forecast. You want to have those things with you. So whenever you review the 10 blocks of time, with what you have on the agenda for the day, then you can kind of set expectations for the tone of how successful the day is going to be. So if, for example, you have some follow-ups and just some standard walk-ins for the day, you can kind of set your time frame as, we're gonna be doing nothing but prospecting today. We don't have an enrollment. We don't have any, appointments, so to speak. So our day is going to look like this. So between now and lunchtime, our goal is to get into 16 businesses. If we don't do anything else, we're going to try to get into 4 businesses per hour. Every 15 minutes, we're going to be trying to get into a business. Our goal, as you can see on the training dashboard, is 30% decision makers met. So what we want to do is we want to get past the gatekeepers and get to the decision makers, so that we can have a good expectation of what the morning is going to look like. So whenever you look at that, if we're going to walk into 16 businesses and we're going to get to 30% decision makers, we're going to try to get in to actually get past four to five gatekeepers to get in front of 4 to 5 decision makers. That's our goal by lunchtime. Okay. And then the goal after that is to get 33% conversions. So what that means, the conversion is either getting into a presentation or scheduling an appointment. And so when you take that 4.8 and you multiply that times 33%, then you've got 1.58 either appointments or presentations. So somewhere between 1 to 2, either appointment and a presentation, 1 to 2 presentations. That's what our goal is by lunchtime. We want to get these things accomplished. So in the morning, whenever you're getting in the car and you're going over this, you could kind of go ahead and set the day for what you're expecting to do. I think a lot of times agents go out and they just walk in businesses to just walk in. They don't really have a good expectation of this is what we should expect to happen. I know in the beginning stages, it can feel like whenever you're getting so much rejection, you can just expect to just get rejection compounded on rejection, compounded on rejection. And you can get into kind of a stride where you don't really expect to get any results. You're just expecting to get negative stuff. But if you go ahead at the beginning of the day and set some expectations up and just kind of visualize and feel what that would feel like to get that accomplished, and just it become a common thing to get those accomplished, then you're probably going to have a better chance of experiencing some more success throughout the day. So pre-field, again, it's kind of like the basics, but material needed for the day. So, you're going to need Epic on your phone. You're going to need your presentation book, the book that we're looking at here. And also the worksite presentation is pretty obvious. You're going to need benefits fact sheet, and you're going to need Section 125 paperwork. And so if that's on iPad form, all that digital stuff, you can kind of just do a quick run. If you've worked with this person, if you're from a leadership perspective and you've worked with this person already, they have all this stuff in there. You can just make sure their documents are clean and that they're ready to, to have a successful day based on the amount of activity that you preemptively predict. You got to make sure you check the route in Epic to make sure that that looks good. You can set a goal for personal recruits. I think a lot of times we don't personal recruit because we forget to. So if that's constantly something that you're talking about, then it's going to come up. Again, like I mentioned before, we want to discuss the 4 weeks, the 10 blocks of time in the 4-week forecast. This is really important too, is you want to discuss what dates and times that you have available for appointments. So oftentimes what I'm hearing is a lot of times your all's first thing is for an appointment is I can come back sometime next week. And what I prefer to do is strike while the iron's hot. So if you're there in the morning, there's been so many accounts closed where we already know our preset time. We know we've got the rest of the morning available and we've got the afternoon. If you've got an appointment at 2 or 3 o'clock, you know that it would have to be sometime before or after that appointment if you were able to follow up. That way, whenever you go in and the decision maker says, I don't have time, and you handle the objection properly, and you don't have to think of or come up with dates and times on the fly. You already have those preset so that whenever you say, hey, that's great, I work by appointment with, later this afternoon at 1 o'clock, or actually I've got 4:30 this afternoon available, it won't take very long. You want to try to get that appointment into the next blocks of time so that you can capitalize on the warmth that you're creating from rapport right then and there in that day. You're going to be role playing, on every single one of these walk-ins. So we're going to be role playing, using the gatekeeper's name and the gatekeeper script. You're going to be role playing the intro to the business owner, using the PACs and the decision maker's name and all the research. You need to know everybody's name on this stuff. It's why research and taking note of what the gatekeeper's name that you talked to when you did the PAC call is so important, because you're going to utilize these things in the walk-in. So you're going to do a lot of role play throughout the day. Okay. So I'm not going to go through every one of these, but the main thing right here that I wanted to touch on this part of the process is where it says provide coaching before and after each walk-in. You need to be ready to practice objections before and after on every single walk-in. Now, if you're by yourself, you might be thinking, well, heck, if I'm running the route by myself, how am I supposed to do that? Just talk to yourself. You need to like verbally say some of these things out loud so that it can go ahead and, I don't know, just be in your DNA or something. Okay. And so be ready to role play a lot. So then whenever we come through, after we set our expectations for what we want to happen, prior to the morning starting, then whenever we go throughout the day, it's going to be a lot easier to check in and kind of inspect what we talked about. So what's going to take place at halftime, you need to pull up your dashboard. So at lunch, whenever you guys take lunch or take a break, if you strategically plan your time, then you can be, go ahead and figure out before your day starts where you guys are going to have lunch, what a break is going to look out throughout the day. Sometimes it's good. Like I know a lot of people say, well, I'm just going to work right through lunch and I'm just going to do this. Okay, that's fine. But like sometimes you do need a moment to like reset and kind of recalibrate and have like a time to almost take a time out. And so even if you're going to eat through lunch, it wouldn't be a bad idea to stop and if you're not going to eat lunch, you stop and get a cup of coffee, grab a thing of peanuts or something, to where that you can stop for a second and you need to take a moment and you need to review your dashboard in the middle of the game. And so that's the reason why there is halftime in a football game, in a basketball game, is because, there's a whole nother half of play left. And that's the time where they sit back, they look at what happened so far, and they make coaching adjustments so that the latter half of the game either continues to be productive if you're doing the right things, or if you need to make some adjustments for the latter part of the game, then you can make those adjustments prior to, so that the rest of the game results can be different if you want them to be than the first part. So what we're going to do whenever the halftime comes, you're going to pull the dashboard and then you can pull up the 10 blocks of time and you can look at it and say, well, remember when we started out this morning, we didn't have anything. So our goal was to get into 16 businesses, before lunch. And, remember our commit numbers and what we committed to. And then we talked about 30% of those DMs were met. So it looks like we walked in X amount of walk-ins. We've got so many DMs met. And I actually pulled a kind of a dashboard, and I'm sorry on this one, I wasn't ready for a lot of times when I have these conversations, I don't really take a lot of screenshots, but this is from the field view. So this is kind of what you guys would be looking at, from a field view perspective from your phone. And it doesn't look the same as from the laptop version. And you all should be using these dashboards anyway, but you could look and say, well, did we see, the 4 to, I guess, whatever it was, 4 to 8 decision makers or 4 to 5 decision makers. And it looks like that we did, right? And in this particular example, this person converted 3 of those decision makers, which is really high. I mean, like that person has had a lucky day. They woke up on the right side of the bed. And then, so out of those 3 conversions, we had 1 appointment scheduled and got into 2 presentations. Okay. And then as you can see, there wasn't a closed case on this particular scenario. So if we refer back to, our field training, windshield training dashboard, we can go back up and we can say, okay, I'm sorry, hold on a second. On here, did we get to 30 to 50% DMs met? And then we can say, okay, it looks like that we did, because when we're looking at our dashboard, we got to 57% DMs met. Okay. And we can say, well, did we build rapport? There's some things for gatekeeper rapport that I'm going to share with you in just a few minutes that can really help her to kind of get you in the right direction. Did we ask for the DM per script? Did we do the disengage? Did we answer the gatekeeper's questions per script? And if we did, we're doing something right, because we're getting to the decision makers. But this is kind of a way that you can evaluate yourself to make sure you're doing what you're supposed to be doing to get progress through the process. Then we can come down and say, okay, did we get 33+% on DM conversions? And so we looked down and we said, well, on this particular scenario, we got a lot higher than 33% with this particular person. So we could say, okay, did we build rapport using research? I think that that's one of the things that a lot of people really could do a better job of. You know, a lot of DM conversions come from taking intentional time to research the business and put in back pocket questions that you would actually say. You know, I've ended up in some scenarios in the field where with some agents and managers where they've, you know, we've gotten to the point where we're doing a role play before we walk into the business, and the manager says, well, I don't know about these back pocket questions. This doesn't sound like something I would really say. So what we want to do is we don't want to discover that while we're in the field driving to the business or in the business's parking lot. We want to discover that in the office when we've got more time to adequately plan and re-prepare and make an adjustment, so that you can then say, okay, what that tells me is someone used AI research, they copied and pasted the research, and they ask, you know, ChatGPT to make back pocket questions, and then they didn't even read the questions to make sure that it was a way that they would say it. So it's really important to make sure that those are things that you would say. We would review if we did the intro to the decision maker, your 30-second commercial per script. If, you know, you did the tie down, you know, asking to go into their office per script. If you handled objections per script. And if you retied down, you know, after objections were handled, to go back and ask for the time to go ahead and present or the tie down for the appointment. And so then we can look and we can review, okay, out of that, did we get 25% cases closed? So we look down and we didn't get any cases closed in this scenario here. So then what we can do is we can do a self-review, or if you're a supervisor, you could do a coaching review and say, okay, did we use the benefits fact sheet? Some people think that the benefits fact sheet is just a time waste, or it's just an extra step. Your benefits fact sheet should be what you're using in order to find out enough information to tailor fit the presentation specifically to the business owner, to the customer, to their scenario. So benefits fact sheet, in my opinion, is an absolute must on every single one. I don't care if they rush you. You need to use your benefits fact sheet, but you can say, okay, did we use that? And if we didn't use it, then we can talk about, well, why didn't we use the benefits fact sheet? Did you notice how when they said this, we could have used the information we found out at the very end when we went to close? If we would have known that to begin with, we could have tailored it around that instead of having to back up and punt in the middle and having to think in real time. Did we do the presentation per script? Did you ask the closing question per script? You know, did you handle objections per script? Did you solidify the close per script? Did you know, get the list of the employees? Did we set the enrollment? So like a lot of times you can evaluate, and these conversations need to happen at lunchtime. So you can say, well, you know, up here at the top, if we're doing our walk-ins with our decision makers met, anything above 30% is going to be in the green. Yellow means have conversation with agent to address adequate levels of performance. And then red says agents frozen, one-on-one training, field training is required with their SA or AD. So, you know, that means we need to make some adjustments. And sometimes some of these percentages, you know, if you're sitting at 20%, you know, right in the red, right below the yellow, then, you know, you're probably right on the line. You don't have to be so hard on yourself. If you're like in the yellow and you're like 29%, then that's almost the green. I mean, and sometimes that's like a half of like a DM met would take that number, you know, to the next level. But this is how you can have those conversations at halftime, is you can actually in real time, you can look at this, and this doesn't have to be done in person. You know, you can have these calls where you can pull up the dashboard and you can say, well, what's happening? You know, with a lot of these guys, you can figure out what's going on by just saying, well, what's happening? Well, they're I don't know, they're not interested, or they're this or they're that. And then you can just say, well, what did you do when they said that? What did you say? And then they could say, well, I said this or I said that. And then you can come back and say, well, what's the objection? Say word for word. Go ahead and do the objection with me. Or if you're in the car and you're coaching through that, you get back in the car during each one, you can say, you notice how when he said he wasn't interested, you said something that went off in left field. Instead of saying, I can certainly understand you saying that, haven't just met me. I'm sure if you took the time to see how I've been able to help other employers at no cost to them to see the benefit, it takes a few minutes to explain. Let's step into your office. You need, this stuff needs to be in your DNA to where that you don't have to think about it. A lot of times there are scenarios and situations that you're going to miss because you're so uncomfortable trying to think about what you have to say, that if you just had all the material memorized to where it doesn't matter how you're feeling on the inside, how nervous you are, how scared you are, how excited you are, how whatever, if you know it enough to where it can come out in any of those scenarios, you can start to be more present and pay attention to all the other things that are taking place. And it's okay to have a tough conversation. The dashboards, they give you the ability to have the conversation so that you can help the person. These things are not I got you. You don't know what you don't know. But then after you do know what you need to be doing, then that's where the accountability comes in order to hold you to the accountability. So this is another example, just another view of if you notice up here at the left side where I've got half day. So this is like a midday on another agent that this particular person walked into 17 businesses. And out of the 17 businesses that they walked in, they ended up converting 4. Or I'm sorry, they got to 4 DMs, right? So, and that's 24%. So the thought process here is like, okay, well, this is a pretty strong half day to walk into 17 businesses by lunchtime and get past 4 gatekeepers and get in front of 4 decision makers. That right there is someone that is hungry and is putting in effort. Okay. A lot of times you see all this red over here and you can freak out on yourself, but like, here's the deal. You got to start somewhere. Okay. You have to start somewhere. And this chart is designed to where from the left side of the ribbon to the right side of the ribbon, you can work from left to right. You can't figure out how to get over on the right-hand side first. You have to get the walk-in mastered. You have to do a good pack call. If you don't do a good pack call, you're going to have crappy walk-ins because you're going to get there. You're not going to get to businesses that are qualified. You're going to end up getting to residential places. You're going to end up in places where the business has moved. And then, if you're not doing that pack call, you're not going to get past gatekeepers because you're going to walk in and ask for someone that's supposedly, allegedly the DM, but has passed away 3 years ago. That's going to end up creating a little bit of discomfort in you. And then who knows what comes out of your mouth after that. But then when you're looking at this in this particular scenario with this particular person, if I was looking at their DMs met, I'd say, hey, look, you're close. Let's look back at our percentages. We want to, for DMs met, 30% is where we want to be. You're at 24%. And, that's not as far off, even though it's in the yellow. If you just had 5.1 is 30%. So you're super close. If you had one more gatekeeper you got past, you would be in the green. So a lot of times, if you guys look at this, if you don't know the metrics yourself and you're looking at this, you can come down hard on someone that really is close to getting some success. And we'd rather encourage them than break them down in these scenarios. So like if you're the agent and you're looking at that, and you're like, well, okay, I got into 4 DMs met. You could say, hey, look, I'm growing, I'm getting better. What are some things that I can work on to get that number into the green? And so if you're trying to get your DMs met up, then there's a couple things that you can do. So I would suggest you write this down. Very simplistic. There's 3 to 4 questions that you can ask a gatekeeper in order to build a little bit better rapport. Okay. And they're open-ended questions. And so one of the things that you could say is, if the girl's name's Susie, that's the gatekeeper, and the owner's name is Bill, you could say, oh, you must be Susie. What's Bill have you doing today? And then that will give them some, they can't just say good. They're going to have to expand on something, or it's going to be really awkward. And then you could say, hey, how long have you worked here? And that's going to help you in two ways. If you find out how long they've worked there, you could tell whether or not they have influence. Okay. What did you do before this? You know, sometimes people will start telling you their life story and they had all these aspirations. And then that just gives you the ability to have some empathy about where they're at in their life, or if this is on the track to where they want to be. You know, what did you do before this? And then the fourth question is, you know, what earned you this opportunity? Whenever you get that, sometimes you find out, well, I've known the owner of the business for all of our life. We went to church together. I was looking for an opportunity. We were talking and they said they needed help. So I decided to come help them. Bingo. That now you have information to where that you've built some rapport. Some of y'all are in there and you're probably like, man, I'm trying to build rapport and I'm the most awkward human in the planet. And some of you guys that are like really good at like just engaging with people, there's going to be scenarios where you can be like, man, am I this awkward? And what's happening is because we're objectifying a lot of the people out there, it is because we're like, okay, we feel like we're being fake. But if you'll just simply take a moment to really care about these things. Well, what they got you doing today? And just think about their day for a second. And what did you do before this? Or how long have you worked here? To get that information, it can give you a little bit more to where that after you've had that little bit of an encounter, when you do the disconnect, or you say, well, could you let Bill know Gabriel's here to see him? And you do a polite disconnect, then they're going to be more apt to go ahead and do that task. And even there's so many people I've worked with where the disconnect is one of the hardest things for them to do because they feel like they're being rude. And, you know, some of the scenarios, managers, you need to coach because a disconnect can be rude. Okay. If you do it at an inappropriate time, or you do it in the wrong verbiage because you're like, well, I'm just going to follow this. There's sometimes where you can't disconnect. Okay. So you've got to use wisdom that on what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, and what is going to work. Okay. But those are things that you can help. So in this scenario here, if they've gotten to 4 decision makers, my conversation with this person is going to say, hey, look, we're having some issues once we get the decision maker in front of us. And the main thing is, you know, you can find that out in the car before even going in, but research is number one. Research, do they have research and back pocket questions? What's the 30-second commercial look like? Are you smiling? Are you using some personality? Or are you like some of y'all, whenever you walk in, you're so worried about what you're going to say that you don't seem like a person. You're straight-faced, very serious, and you've got to be a little bit more lighthearted. Decision makers are going to give you objections. They're not just going to push over. You've got to know your objections before the presentation. Okay, so what do those look like? And here's the deal. They're in the packet. They're in your worksite training book. Okay, so like it's really simple. If you're a manager, well, how do I inspect what they're doing? We'll pull the objections out and say, okay, I'm not interested. Go over the objection that they just gave you in the business in the car. Go over it a few times. You even when you're role playing prior to walking in each business, you role play in the car. It's going to be weird to begin with, but the more you do it, it becomes unweird. Well, okay, so here's what we're going to do is we're going to role play and Susie, you're going to walk in, you're going to say, hey, Susie, what do they got you doing? And then do the actual role play in the car so that then the post conversation can be helpful. Okay. And then on this particular person, I mean, there's nothing really to coach when it comes to close on here because you're not going to close if you can't present. Okay. So there's no sense in like talking about the closing objections. That's going to be meat for the time whenever we actually get into a presentation. You cannot coach closing if you don't have any closed cases. And hey, managers, here's a little something for you. It's really hard to coach someone if you haven't shown them how to close an account, if they don't see you closing yourself. So another ribbon, this is going to be like the post field day. So again, what you can do is at the top on your training guide, page 29, it has all the stuff that you can do at the end of the day. So you review Epic Dashboard in comparison to 10 blocks of time to see if the commitment that we had for the whole day. And another thing too with halftime dashboard. So after you go over the halftime dashboard, then what you can do is you can say, okay, well, here's what the plan is going to be for the rest of the day. Now, if you all said, okay, we're going to get 16 walk-ins between 8 a.m. and lunch, and you only end up with 6, guys, if you want to get discouraged after lunch, say, okay, well, we're going to make up the other 10, plus we're going to get 16 more. You're not going to get 26 walk-ins after lunch, okay? So don't say stupid stuff, all right? Sometimes what you've got to do is you can say, well, bygones, be bygones. What we're going to do is we're going to move forward. We're going to make some adjustments. We're going to need to pick up the pace a little bit. Now that we're aware of it, we're going to start coaching a little more in the car instead of taking so much time. We need to get you, and then at the end of the day, you can say, hey, look, you were taking a whole lot of time to enter your stuff in Epic. I need you tonight to go to practice or to go, we need to start doing a little bit more deep dive on how to get this stuff going. And you need to, get a little more technologically advanced. You review all the stuff that you just talked about basically at halftime afterwards. You coach on the areas, that of opportunity that, based on what you experienced throughout the whole day, what could happen? Did we meet our personal recruiting commitments? And then confirm what the next day looks like. Okay. And here's a couple examples of just post-day dashboards. Here's a really strong dashboard. 20 walk-ins for the day. Okay. This person got in front of 5 decision makers. That's 25% decision makers met. They had 2 DM conversions. Okay. So they ended up getting into 2 presentations, and they closed an account, in that particular day. So this person, when we take in the amount of walk-ins, the decision makers met, the amount of time for presentations, and there's a time value for each of these. We're going to probably be going over that. And we went over some of that in our previous AD meeting. We're going to be going over that in a future training, but this day is a super productive day. Even though there was only 20 businesses walked in, the amount of effort they're not going to get in 30 businesses, convert 5 DMs, do 2 presentations, close a case. And it's just not possible. It's not physically possible to get in there unless you are super condensed. You've got a lot of plans and you are fast and this stuff. You have to be a master in order to get that much activity in there. And then here's another end of day post field inspection. This is a person that had 32 walk-ins. They had 7 DMs met, so 22%. And so it's like, okay, that's not bad. I mean, that's a whole lot of activity for the day. The DMs met needs to be up in the 30 percentile. But then my coaching here would be, okay, this person, I will guarantee you, this person here does not have adequate research and is not up on their pre-objections. Okay. It's just, you could tell by looking, like if you're getting in front of 7 DMs and we're not converting any of them, then there is some breakdown there with some research, objections before the presentation. And then, in closing things, if you're getting all that stuff done, but you're having trouble on the closing side of things, then we're going to talk a little bit about, how we talk often about painting the picture of the simplicity of an enrollment, how simple the enrollment process should be, 10 minutes per person. You can, even by yourself, you should be able to enroll 6 people per hour and get sales, and then make sure that you've got the closing objections down. And then whenever you're transitioning from benefits fact sheet to presentation to paperwork, it needs to be one smooth, seamless transition. It doesn't need to be, now I'm going to show you a presentation, and then after you do a presentation, now we need to do some paperwork. You just need to start going through the presentation after the benefits fact sheet. You just need to go straight into the paperwork. If you say, well, now I'm going to show you a presentation, they're going to look down at their watch. After the end of the presentation, if you say, I've just got a little bit of paperwork to complete, they're literally going to look down at their watch and check the time. And that's where you're going to get objections, where I don't have a whole lot of time. So, Brian, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Man, that was good. Thank you so much, guys. I hope you took notes. Like I said, this is going to be on our YouTube channel. We're a couple minutes after 3, but I just really want to make sure that a few things stood out. There was so much that I took away. I mean, I've written almost a page of notes here, but one of the first things Gabriel started with is don't walk in to walk in. We walk in to present. And then he came in and he said, without a goal, and I never thought about this, Gabriel. Thank you so much for sharing this. But without a goal, we tend to accept the rejection as just normal. And the reality is, we're going to get rejection. We're going to get no's, but a percentage should be yeses. 30% says every 10, 3 say yes, 7 say no. But if we don't have that goal set, what happens is I get the 7 no and just consider that the norm. Then I get an 8th no, then I get a 9th no, then I get a 10th no, and I accept it as the norm. That's not the norm, guys. The norm is 70% say no. And if you're average, you're getting 30% yes, or in the scenario he showed, maybe 35, maybe 40, maybe 45 or 50. But make sure you've got goals for the day, then hold yourself accountable. He mentioned, remember, we walk in to present. So if I'm walking in today to get into a presentation and they say they don't have time, if you read our rebuttal on the objection, I don't have time, I do not schedule to come back next week. The first thing I try to do is, while I'm in the area, I'm coming back today. That's the first thing I'm going to try to do. And he said that. Make sure you're trying to set same day appointments. Don't beat yourself up if you've got, high yellows. High yellows, if you're 26, 7, 8, 9, and 30% is green, like, celebrate the wins, right? I could take a 25 and work on it to go to a 26, but don't beat yourself up on it. Hey, the 25% closing ratio in the screenshot he showed from the field, the phone, because one was a phone view, one was a laptop view. Well, here's the thing. 25% of my presentations equal a close. Well, for me to get to 25%, I need 2 more presentations. So when I talk about being 0 right now, well, that's because I haven't done enough presentations. When I get to 4, statistics say 1 in 4 will produce a close. So what I've got to do is get into 2 more presentations to make sure I get that 1 close. Again, reiterating, read that ribbon left to right. Read that ribbon left to right. You're not going to impact the right side of the ribbon without moving left to right. And last thing I'm going to add, I love this question. Gabriel, I don't know if you came up with this on your own or stole it from somebody else. All my great ideas are stolen from somebody else. I'm going to use this and probably take credit for it one day. But I love when he said these 3 or 4 questions. What does the decision maker, what does Bill have you doing today? I mean, I just think that's a great way. Oh, you must be called the gatekeeper by first name. Got it. I do that. And I ask the other things. How long have you been here? What were you doing before? How did you get this position? Or what did you do to earn the front office? Whatever. But I love opening it up to what does Bill have you doing today? I thought that was so powerful in rapport building. Guys, this is going to be on our YouTube channel later. Sorry we don't have time for Q&A. Besides that, let's finish the day strong, and we'll see y'all Thursday morning at 7:30.